All right, welcome back. We are Game 3004 in the winter 2021 semester, and it's week 4, part 4 of our broadcast. I'm going to be talking about ImGui actually in Unity and a minimap, how to create a minimap again. So we'll do that right now. So where last we left off, we kind of deployed this live, and I want to start working with interfaces. Sometimes what we want when it comes to quick interfaces is we can use something called ImGui, right? ImGui actually is what we use with C++, and it comes from a project called Dear ImGui, right? So what we need, of course, is some scripts. And to demonstrate this, what I want to create is a simple start scene that's empty. So let's do that first. So I'll go to Scenes, and I'll make a brand new start scene. All right, so let's make a new scene. And the new scene will be called Start. The start scene is something that I'm going to put in my build too. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Build Settings, and I'm going to drag and drop the start scene before my main scene. So Start, drag it before my main scene. And then now you can see that the index for the start scene is 0, and the index for my main scene is 1. Cool. Let's double click my start scene. So I'll go from there. I'll save my current scene, and I'll go to my start scene, which is completely empty. So again, what I want to do with this is I want to think about, for now, I just want to put some basic user interfaces. And let's suppose I don't have a lot of time, and I want to test simple buttons and all that kind of stuff. I can use ImGui. Let's make a new game object, empty, and we'll call this game object game control. And I'll tag this to make it call it game controller, and I'll add a new C# script, and we'll just call it the new game controller script. So again, C# script, we'll call it game controller. And in my game controller script, we're just going to double click this to start off our script in Unity. And in my on my script in Unity here, I'm going to add a new area. I'm going to say void on GUI. And my onGUI script, what it does is it waits for the GUI to load. And what I can do is, it's really amazing. I can create something called an immediate mode user interface. And I can do it just like I did in C++ or in other places when I was using OpenGL. I can go at if, and I can say something like if ImGui, so ImGui, and I want to make a button. So ImGui, let's try this again. Not ImGui container. Let's get rid of this UI element thing. So onGUI is actually the function, and ImGui, that doesn't like it. Let me just go into to fix this problem, and let's go into Unity docs for this, unity.com, and I'll say Unity onGUI. So what it looks like is exactly what I did. I kind of onGUI, and then GUI.button. So if GUI dot, it's pretty simple, onGUI.button, and then the name of the button. So we'll say something like start, call the button start. And what we need to also supply for the button is also a rect. So we can do a new rect, and the rect takes X, Y, width, and height. So let's suppose I want to put the object in the middle, somewhere in the middle of the screen. Let's say something like 300, and let's say, or at the top, so 300 on the x-axis, and let's say something like 10 on the y-axis, right? So these are both floats. And then I can choose the width and the height of the button. Let's say the width of the button is something like, I don't know, 100, and the height is something like 30. So that is where the button would come out. Okay, so that's the new rect. And why is it giving me this error? It's actually the other way around. Because if I go GUI button, it needs a rect and then a string. So let's just do that. So we'll grab that rect and we'll put it in front of the string. There we go. And what this does is what this means is if I click my button, then I want to do a debug.log and I'll say clicked. Okay, so pretty simple UI. And the great thing about this, it doesn't run in, it's not in the editor. It has to run, so save the scene. If I run it, you'll see that a button will pop up approximately where I tell it to. If there's a button in the scene, I gotta be careful about the X and Y coordinates because again, it could be in the scene right now, but it could be way somewhere in a different place that I can't see it. So let's just try something, instead of 300, let's try something like 10. Okay. Oh yeah, it'd be nice if I connected the controller to the game controller. Haha. There it is. Let's do that again. So game controller, I connect the controller and then I run it. And you see I have a nice little button that comes up on the top left corner and it does its job. So really, really quick. So no canvas, nothing. It's immediate mode UI. Great thing about immediate mode UI is I can change it on the fly. So that means even when I'm running, if I don't like the button there, let's put it at 300 in script, save it, and then immediately it will update until it comes to the place where I'm going to put it. So if my screen is 1024 by 768, then it'll be something like 512. There it is. And I can modify it there, right? I can also use screen width coordinates, right? Because the screen has a screen X and screen Y. But really what these are for, these little buttons and stuff, they're just there for testing. Quick tests, they're not really meant for the final game or anything like that. But if you want some buttons, to work with your user interface and you don't want to put together a canvas, ImGui is kind of built into Unity and you can just do it in the onGUI function. There's a lot of other functions you can put in. So for example, you can use a GUI.box. A GUI.box has a rect position. So let's just do this new rect position as well. It has a rect position, right? And you can also provide a string for the box. So something like, here's a panel. And we can position this is the X, and obviously the box has to be a lot larger. So maybe it'll be something like 600 wide by something like 500 tall, some bigger area. Instead of starting it at 512, let's march it back, somewhere to the left, something like 300. And then let's see what that looks like. So again, if I do that and I make a box, then there's the box. And you can see that it's kind of like a panel that appears behind the button. It's in draw order. So if I drew the button first and then the box, again, I can see this live too, which is cool. Then you're going to see the button is behind the box now. Okay. So it's in draw order, layer order. So I can draw the box first. And I noticed that the box was drawn where it is, but I want to put the UI button a little lower. Let's put this at 30. And maybe even lower. So 50. And there we go. So we can see a little panel and a little UI. You can't really do much with this. I mean, it's programmatic and it's in real time, but it's really used for some quick user interface in order for me to start my game. Let's use a scene manager to do that. So again, Nothing spectacular, but I want to use Scene Manager. So I say something like using Unity Engine. And we've seen this from last semester, scene management. And what I can do is, instead of just making the button click, I can say that scene manager, and I want to load scene, and the name of the scene, which would be main. So that'll take me to the main scene. So a quick way of doing it, I don't want to build a UI, and my UI is temporary, and I want to kind of get moving closer. I can build this, it runs, click start, and there I am in the main scene. Now locally, notice I've been having a problem with moving with if I go back to the scenes and I go to main, I can go back to my player and noticed anyway, that the player camera, which has a sensitivity of 100, is really slow. But it's really slow here. It's not really slow on the build. What it tells me is that I'm running in debug mode equivalent here, but on the build, excuse me, I'm running pretty fast. So let's take a look and see if I can fix this problem now. So again, I'm on the scripts. I'm going to go to the camera controller, and let's see what is happening. So by default, I made the sensitivity 1,000, but what's happening is I'm taking the sensitivity and multiplying by time times delta time, and also in the update function. The way I can avoid doing this is I can also use fixed update. Remember, fixed update and delta time, it's going to be more of a standard step. Now, there's a problem if I do this, but let's see what happens. So let's say, for example, I say I want to make a void fixed update for physics and all those kind of things. Input, not a great idea, but let's see the difference. If I take my mouse X and mouse Y, and I use the same sensitivity, but without a delta time. So no delta time. Now notice mouse X and mouse Y don't appear here, so I probably want to make them something that is more global. So let's use that up here, but we'll make them private. So private float, we'll say mouse X. We can also make it a vector, by the way. So mouse.x, mouse.y. Let's do that. We'll make it a private vector2 object, right? And we'll call it mouse. All right, so there's my mouse. And then what I can do is I can say that mouse.x and mouse.y is what I want. So I can say mouse.x is equal to this, mouse.y is equal to this, right? And then down in here, I can use the same values, mouse.y and mouse.x. Now I can't use delta time, or it doesn't really make sense to use it in fixed updates, so let's get rid of it for now and see if I have a better effect, right? When I am here, make sure I don't delete my curly brace. And let's see how that looks. So I got sensitivity, but instead of my sensitivity being 1,000, it's now 100. Let's see if that gives me better performance than what I've had before. So again, going back to my player camera, it's 100. Let's see if that is better, worse, the same. And whoa, it's like super fast, right? 100 is like crazy fast. It's like crazy, like amazing fast. Let's even make it so the sensitivity is low, like 10, even slower than that. And it's pretty chunky, right? So the reason why it's chunky like this, because what happens is with fixed update, it works on a fixed time step. This is not a great idea, all right? Not a great idea at all to multiply by some kind of sensitivity. All right. And what happens if remember, mouse X and mouse Y, I'm going to get my sensitivity. So it goes from a -1 to 1. That's what input.getAxis does, -1 to 1. So, and it's multiplied by the sensitivity. And then I'm saying that my rotation is going to be whatever it is here, and that's how I'm getting the motion left and right. If I've taken this away, so let's say, for example, I just do this, just to show you the difference. So I don't scale it in any way. If I just did this, it's going to be super slow. -1 to 1 is like 1 degree rotation every frame. Multiplied by my sensitivity, it's really slow. So if I tried doing this, and I ran it, you might think that this is wrong, but actually, this is pretty good, right? So no sensitivity, and I'm running okay. It's not really that clunky at all. It's 1 degree at a time, right? And so why would this be this way? Well, because remember what's happening is it's scaling according to fixed delta time. Now what's happening though is, like, notice that there are little chunks as I move my mouse. I'm trying to be it's not as smooth, as an example, as it could be, right? We can fix this by multiplying this number by a smaller number. So instead of sensitivity, we can go with something like 0.5. Let's try that. So multiply by 0.5f, and let's see how that really slows us down. Again, think about this as 0.5f degrees, right? To see the difference. And then we'll run it online and see what that does. So, okay, cool. Running it. And now, well, it's really too slow. Like, it's super slow if I went to 0.5. 0.5 is like a terrible situation. You know, we can't even breathe with 0.5. How about 0.9? So we can try and scale it a little bit. Instead of making it like exactly 1 degree, I can make it less than 1 degree and see how that works. Again, all of a sudden the scale is like super slow. Just as soon as I multiply it by something, it becomes really, really slow. So just doing this, just by doing some kind of multiplication factor, I'm getting a very super slow situation. Let's try this again. Again, I'm saving it and I'm running it. And maybe I didn't save the file last time, and that's why it ran so nicely. And my sensitivity of 10 was fine. Yeah. Let's go back to that sensitivity. So this is sensitivity of 10. That's what I had set here in the player, right? So my player camera, it says sensitivity of 10. Save the scene, and I want to save my file because maybe my file wasn't saved last time. And when I tried it, that's when I had, you know, really slow. You see that 10 is like, even that is like super chunky, like super low. Again, really based on fixed time step, which is not really a great idea. And 100, right, as we saw before, is also very slow. And it's not predictable. We don't want this to happen. So we wanted something in between. So we certainly could do this. But what if I take this back now and I put it back in here? So just multiply by sensitivity as an example, and it's going to be done every frame. Now we got to be careful here because the numbers are wacky. Let's take this away and go back to that and see what it does when I run it one more time. So save. So now it's going to be wacky. It's going to look crazy fast, like super sensitive, right? Like I can move it just a bit, and it's like, whoa, it's like really crazy, right? And my sensitivity is like, you know, at 10 right now. I can turn it down, so I can try a different value, or 100. Let's try a different value like 10 and see how that looks with no delta time. Okay, much better, right? It's definitely not as bad, right, as what we had before. It's not, I don't need it to be 1,000, right? And it's a little bit more consistent than what I had before. So kind of cool. I can move it around. It's really sensitive, right? As an example, 10. I can lower it even more. So let's try another value. Let's try 5 and see what that looks like. Even, you know what? Even 5 is good. Even 5 is good. 5 is really good. 5 feels good. right? Okay. One thing I also had a problem was when we started the game, I'd always look down. So, this is the problem. So my mouse is looking like way over here, right? How do we correct this? How do I make it so that it starts looking here first and it doesn't look down at the beginning, right? Because that's what a lot of other scripts kind of do. So this is something we need to correct. Okay. I also really don't like the jumping. So 5 is good. Let's put this back to 5. I think 5 is a good number, at least here in edit mode. Let's see when I build it to WebGL what it feels like. I'm going to go to also, as an example. So this is something I want to do here. So I want to save it. And let's see what it looks like when I run it. So File, Build, and Run. And I'm building. It's going to start off now because Start is in my my build settings. I'm going to start with the start scene. It's going to build my start scene because that's the first scene with my little box that I made, which is like, and the box is, again, I want to use the screen parameters in order for me to adjust to how wide it is if I'm going to do it at all. I don't really care about it that much, because again, it's just a box for me to, to kind of outline any one of my options. It's not something that's draggable or anything like that. I'm just using it for a convenience. But let's see if I can fix my my mouse problems now. And what happens if I don't use delta time and kind of a sensitivity of like 5? And we'll see what happens as I continue to build. And if you're watching this on YouTube later on, and you've seen me building for WebGL, especially when you make a scene change like I did, it can take a while. So fast forward until this is done. If you're watching live, be patient. My machine's working as hard as we can to try and convert to WebAssembly. But ImGui is great because if I need a button really quick, and instead of using something options, if I want an example in ImGui, like that part on the GUI inside of on the user interface. Yeah, there we go. So it built. Let's see how crazy it is now with my control. So I'm here in Start. I can click on Start. It takes me to my control, and you know what? It's not that terrible. It's really fast actually, but it's not as bad as before, right? So kind of not as crazy fast. It's still pretty smooth, maybe a little bit too sensitive even, again, but it's something that you can adjust. And I'm doing it in the editor, but it'd be nice if we had an options menu so I can adjust the sensitivity in the options menu. Okay, so that's pretty cool. It built. This is just my test for building to OpenGL. I want to get the screen X and screen Y. So screen, I type screen in there. A lot of times screen is something that I can get. So this is my screen coordinates. If I want to get width and screen height, we saw that is something that I can do. So that'll give me the screen width and the screen height in pixels. So let's do that. So again, if I say that my box, I'm going to go back to my scenes, and if I want to go to Start as an example, and into my Start scene, I want to go to my game controller and start my script. So I want my box to be a percentage of the screen width. So I can say something like auto var, I meant width, I'm thinking C++, auto width is equal to screen, wow, I can't type, dot width. And I want to multiply the width by some amount of screen. Let's say half the width of the screen, multiplied by 0.5 f. So that is going to give me a variable that is a float, which is width. And I want to say the height, as an example, is screen.height, and multiply that by something like, I don't know, 30% of the screen height or something like that. Not quite half. I mean, I could do half just to be the same. So screen width and height at half. And then instead of me deciding how wide it is for my box, I can just put in width and height. And for where I want this, I want the actual screen width divided by 2. So width would be where I want to start this, right? And let's see what happens. So if I run it, then now it should be way over there, right? So this is where I start. So I want to do half the width. So instead of width, I can say width times 0.5f. So half the width of the screen, that's where it's going to start. And it's going to be for the entire width. So now it's completely centered, right? And now it looks a little better. Great thing about this is if I make it wider or narrower, then the panel changes size. So I can change the size of my screen. I need to adjust the position of my button so it also follows the panel, so it's responsive. So again, this is just making it so it's a little fun to do. Again, so this is the position of where this starts. I want to start this in the middle of the screen, so I can take the same kind of offset that I used up there. And I don't really want to change the size of my button because I don't need to do that. So save. And if I run it, you can see now that it'll move. Okay, so that is where it starts. I really want to start there. Again, not terribly bad to where it started, but that's not what I was looking for. I wasn't looking for this. I want to move it over here. So this does that. I want to make it so that it's width. Let's see that if it's width now, if that's what I meant. Kind of. But I want to go back. I want to march back the width of my button. So width minus the width of my button. My width of my button is 30. So let's say minus 15 pixels. Some value because it's the size of my button. And that would be maybe more. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong value. It's 50. End of the day, that's what happens. All right, so that is the middle. So now what I can do is I can say, that's cool. My screen will move. If it's really small like this, you can see like that's like the smallest I can possibly get, but the button's not going to be much smaller than that. And I can add things in here that I want as well, right? So I can add not just buttons, but also a label. So I have my panel that I can add that in or not. So things like, you know, statistics go here. And remember, I can save or not show or not show this on a click. If I want to show a statistics or something that goes up, I can do this anytime I want, right? I don't have to use Canvas. So cool, I need a box, but then what if I want to have a label? So I want to say something like GUI.label, labels and buttons, right? I need a position. So I use the same position starting as my button. So I'll get this new rect. And I want a label that says, that kind of shows off, you know, kind of information that I want to, right? So something like data goes here. So some kind of data that goes there. Maybe I want to show something off. Sometimes I can show the label and it'll be right on top of this. Statistics go here, data go here. And then I want to move the button down more. So X, Y, let's move this down to 50. It's not what I meant. I mean, let's move this down to something like 60. And that is the height. I meant move down this thing here, X and Y. Wow. End of the day, guys. End of the day. This is what happens. My brain starts shutting down. There we go. That's what I meant. So it kind of, you can put whatever data you want in there. If you want to show some data or whatever, if I click the button, you can add other statistics here that are running, that the label, things like frame rate and that kind of stuff can show up. Okay. But this is just a test, and I can click start, and now I'm back to this. Much nicer. Cool. All right, so that is ImGui. Let's put together a MiniMap. Now remember how the MiniMap works. And we talked about the MiniMap last semester. So I want to go back into my scenes, and I want to go into the main scene again. The MiniMap is something that I want to draw on the top right corner of my screen, but it needs to be in a canvas. So let's add a new UI element. And what I want is a raw image, right? So what happens is if I try and do this raw image, right, it brings the raw image way down over here, and this is my canvas. So my canvas is like way up here, and what I want is for this raw image, which is going to be, let's suppose we'll call this the MiniMap, and I want to bring this MiniMap way in the corner, and I can also change the size of my MiniMap, right, to make it as wide or as big as I want within, for my eye. Like my eye says it should be probably about this wide. And then I can numerically change this width and height over here. So 238 point something and 146 point something harkens to 150 by something like 240 as a ratio. That's where the information is going to go. And what I want to do is I want to target, I want to have a render texture that goes right in there. And so what I can do is in the textures folder, I can make a new render texture. So go down to render texture. And this is with no assets, just my render texture itself. We'll just call this the MiniMap texture. So we know what that is. And in the MiniMap, then I can drag and drop the MiniMap texture in there. Cool, that's the target. That's the texture. I need another camera. For the MiniMap to work, there's two cameras. One, that's the player cam, and the other one, maybe that's just the camera for the MiniMap cam, right? So the MiniMap cam is a separate camera. So let's make that. So I'll make a new 3D object. I want a camera. And this is going to be reset. So let's reset the position. Reset. Way down there. And notice where it is. So let's teleport to that. And this is the 0, 0 point that I'm looking at. I want to choose a different location for the camera. So this is the location for the camera. Right. Here it is. And I want to rotate the camera 90 degrees. So let's go with across the x-axis. So let's say negative 90, or how about what I said, which is 90. I want to make it so that it doesn't have anything to do with the skybox. So we'll say solid color, right? My color on the background is going to be black, right, for the MiniMap. So that's the camera. And I want it to be orthographic instead of perspective projection. And I want to pull it up. So instead of 5, I want to pull it up so that it is like 20. And instead of it projecting, kind of normally on a viewport, I want to first of all get rid of the audio listener. So we can get rid of this part. Just remove it. No audio listener. And I want to choose a render texture. Or choose the MiniMap texture. So that is where it's going to render. It's going to render to the MiniMap texture itself. That's pretty big, 20. I chose 20. You can also choose the clipping planes 0.3 and 1,000 is really far. I don't think we need 1,000. Let's try 100, which is a little better. And it says occlusion culling is good. And it says use graphic settings and MSAA. You know, that's okay. We can leave those on. Allow dynamic resolution. MSAA is requested by the camera, but not enabled. In quality settings, this camera will render without MSAA. So we can actually choose off, right? And the same thing goes with HDR. We don't need HDR for the MiniMap. We want to make it as lightweight as possible anyway. So again, let's go through the details. I have a MiniMap texture. MiniMap texture is literally a raw texture, a render texture is what this thing is. I've just named it to MiniMap texture. I want to have the canvas with a minimap. So if I double click on that, you can see that that is what's going to be rendering, right? And notice that in the background, it's transparent. So if I look at the scene itself, the game scene, that is what I'm going to be seeing, okay? When I run the game, so if I press play, you can see that I'm going to see what the camera sees all the time, right? Which is this. And it's looking down at my maze. Okay, cool. But one thing I don't see is it doesn't really track the player in any way, right? So I need to track the player, number one. And the other thing I need to be able to do is see the player. And just like last semester, what we need for this is a little marker. Maybe the minimap is maybe too small. So maybe I want to make this bigger so I can actually make some sense. So let's try this again. And I'm going to go back to my scene. And one way to do it when we're looking at the minimap to see what it looks like is, I've got this area here that's being tracked by the minimap, right? And there's another part in here that is empty. And that's because where I position the map. But that's okay. That's all right. So that is so far what I've got. I think we can make this bigger. So again, instead of the 240 and 150, let's make it so it's taller. So instead of height being 150, let's make it 250. Now, when I do that, notice that it skews the object, right? So it skews the object. And let's think about what this means. I should really try and keep the same ratio of my screen. So and one thing we haven't done here in my screen itself is under my game, it's free aspect. And that's okay. But what we want to do is we want to make it so that instead of free aspect, we want to make it so that it's 1024 by 768 like it is on, for example, on my WebGL, right? Because that's what it's going to kind of show anyway, right? And let's add that in. So I'll add a new resolution for now. Let's see what that looks like. So I'll say that this is, 1024 by 768. That's what my resolution will be. And I want to change the fixed resolution of 1024 by 768. If you really want to be clear, what you can say is this is going to be WebGL for WebGL. And that is what my object's going to look like. So I think what's better for it to be here for width and height is some ratio of my my screen, because otherwise what's going to happen is this is going to be skewed, right? So let's see how that looks so that you can see that this is okay. Let's run it and see what that looks like in the editor. All right, so I've got more, it's more proportional than what it was before, right? And it's squarish, and this is a good thing, right? It is occluded, right, as an example. So I can't see behind the minimap, and that's okay because that's how it should work. Right, so that's it. You can see that this is pretty cool. And minimap's in the top right corner. And that's the size of my WebGL screen, right? If I was to run this, if I go File, Build, and Run, how does it look when I do a mini-map on WebGL? Does it have the same quality? Am I able to see the mini-map? What does it look like? I need a couple things. I need to set up a marker, that's for sure. And I'm going to show the marker in a couple ways to do. The marker be on top of the player all the time. So wherever the player is, the marker will move around, right? I could do that. I can also make it so that the marker is on the canvas. So whatever the canvas is looking like on the mini map I'm talking about, then it's going to be looking at that particular object on the canvas. Again, a couple of options. Right now, the camera doesn't follow me, which I want it to. And I want to use Cinemachine for this because Cinemachine will give me a nice, smooth follow, right? And the other thing that I want to do with Cinemachine is I want the minimap to track me, or the minimap camera to track the player, but just slightly behind what the player is doing. Okay? Notice that every time I build, especially if I make a major change to the scene, then what's going to happen, and I made a couple of changes. One, I changed the start scene. I updated the start scene, and I updated the main scene as well. So this is going to rebuild everything. So while this is going, let's build, I'll let this build. Where I want to my little, and what I do with the minimap marker is I want to move them, right? Oh, I love this. I'm licensed, man. I'm licensed. Love when it does that. All right, so there's the minimap. It kind of works okay, right? Minimap is, kind of rendering fine in my scene. Can I still maximize? I can, and this is good. It kind of puts it right here. I have to fix that. This should be on the top right corner of my screen, whether I maximize or not. So that's an issue I have to fix. So let's go back. I'm definitely already registered. Let's license this software. And sign in required. Sure. I don't know why or how I got signed out, but I'm totally signed up and I have access. Love when that happens. All right, so here I am with this. I want to build, and I'll come back to Unity in a second. I want to build a little marker. So I'm going to kind of think about how big this marker should be. Again, the higher the resolution, in many ways, it's good. It's going to be squarish, so let's make it 100 by 100 pixels to start. Transparent background is good. So it's really big. And what I want to do is basically draw a triangle, all right? Now, there's a lot of ways to do this, guys. As an example, I could use a polygon, right? Because notice that in some of these tools, you have polygons. And sides, as an example, I can drop it down to 3. So I can draw a polygon any way I want. And it's a really quick way of doing it in, in here in this thing. Also, what I have is that I don't want to make a very big border, and I want to kind of start wherever the polygon is being drawn from. It starts from the middle, so I can kind of make the polygon draw my triangle so that it is at least this wide, and then I can modify it after. Right, so let's move it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to definitely center it, right, as an example. And it is a perfect triangle because what I've done is I've used a polygon shape to do it. I don't have to worry about it, right? Now, I've also zoomed in a lot, right? So if I zoom out, it's going to be like way down here, right? I want to move this right down. And I want to move this so it's a little sharper. So I want to modify this object here, so skew it just a little bit. So bring it up to the top, which is going to skew the, kind of the way the triangle looks. So it's at the top here, right? Let's try that again. So again, just move this up. Again, you can use any application to do this. And once I've done this, once I've got, kind of a simple polygon like this, I can fill it with whatever I want. I want to make my players, kind of marker green as an example. But I want to make it for the fill shape, the fill color, not the outer color. The outer color I want to keep as, if I want to keep it as black, it's okay, or a dark green, that's okay. So maybe I want to choose a darker green for the outside color. And if I think it's too dark, I can kind of lighten that up a little bit more. So I can see a darker area, as an example, that is my player's marker. Cool. Let's save this. So File, Save As, and I'll call it Player Marker. And this needs to be saved inside of my project. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I have GBC inside GAME3004 inside Lab 2B, and I'm going to put it inside of my assets, textures, player marker, save. And let's see what that looks like when I go into Unity. Player marker. What we need to do with the player marker is where it says the texture type is default, all right, what I need it to be, right, as an example, is it needs to be transparent. So it's not a normal map. It's definitely a sprite, 2D, and UI, right? And there's also other options as well. So sprite, 2D, and UI, legacy UI editor, and all that kind of stuff. If I choose that, then you can choose that. But I think that would probably be the best thing. Sprite is single. Pixels per unit is 100. Okay. It says wrap mode and maximum size and all this kind of stuff, and filtering and wrap mode is clamp. Compression quality is normal. I want to say none, no compression, right? And that's what it would look like, transparent. Okay. And I want to put this on a quad, right? I want to put it on a quad, and it's going to be on the player object. So let's go back to the player. And on the player, I want to add in a new quad. Here it is. Here's my new quad. And let's go to the quad. So it's hovering on the player. I want to rotate the quad across the x-axis 90 degrees. So we can't really see it from the side, but when I go to the top, you can see the quad. And what I want to do is I need a material, right? So right now the mesh itself, mesh renderer doesn't have a material. It's a default material. And I want to make a new material called the marker, the player marker material. So again, what I want to do is I want to definitely render this texture, this player marker. I want to render it on the quad, right? So this quad here, right? Mesh collider. I don't need a mesh collider. Let's get rid of it. It's not going to collide with anything. So remove. No more mesh collider. Probes are like light probes. Those are okay to put in and stuff like this. Cast shadows. Nah, the quad shouldn't cast shadows. That should be off. It should be transparent, right? So this is the thing that I got to change. Is this material. Let's add a new material. So we'll call this a new material. And we'll make this material, I won't name it yet, but I want to do UI unlit, and then it's got to be transparent. And this is going to be, and I can choose a texture for this. And it's the player marker texture. Okay, that's what the material is going to be, the player marker texture. So this is going to be the player marker material. Player marker. So that's all it's going to be, right? Cool. Notice that there's no tint. I'm going to go back to the quad, and I want to connect the player marker material. And now you can clearly see that the player marker is in the right order here. How does this look for the camera? Can the camera see it? So one is, I want to create a new layer for this one, a new layer called player marker. And actually it should just be called marker, because we can use it for the same layer for the enemy marker when there is an enemy, right? And I want to click play. And then you can see that, sure enough, there's the player marker, but it also appears in my regular camera, and I don't want it to. Okay, but it also gives me a sense of where my camera is. That's where my camera is. That's where my actual player is. And if I look around here and I move, you can actually see me moving now on the minimap, right? Cool. Excellent. Nice. But I don't want to see it. And what I can do is, because my player marker is inside of here, let's call this the player marker. Player marker. Then my player camera is going to not see it. And the way I can do that is in the culling mask, I can say that I don't want to see the player marker. Cool. So when I run it now, well, I'm still seeing it. So I don't want to see it. Maybe it's because my player marker didn't get tagged as a marker. Let's try that again. Right? Can't see the player marker, but now I can see it on the minimap, and it's pretty good. I get a sense of what's happening. Okay. Now I haven't followed the player yet, so the camera doesn't follow the player. It just, the player kind of goes to the edge. So this is like the edge of my screen, and that's kind of like the edge. It goes to edge, and it is a squarish look. That is my object, so it kind of runs around, and it's pretty small. My player is like way down there. So it gives me a sense of what to look for. The other thing I don't want to do is I really don't want to see this in my scene every single time I look at my player. Right? I want it to be hidden from my screen. So again, when it comes to layers, right, and these are visible layers, I don't want to see my marker. I can turn it off. So these are things I don't want to see, not in my editor, right? So now what I can do is I can run around and not worry about even seeing that in my editor at all when I start off. It's there. Here it is. It's right here in my player marker. My player marker is here, but I just don't want to see it in the editor. So it's just annoying, right? Okay, that's cool. Now my camera. So my camera, this camera here, is my MiniMap camera. Let's change that. MiniMap camera. So we know what this is, MiniMap camera. The MiniMap camera is going to follow the player. So a couple ways to do this is I can do a hard follow by dragging and dropping it into the player. And then when I run it, if I was to do that, then you're going to see that the map turns and moves around, right, according to where the player is looking. So it doesn't, and it also gets affected by the light. So which is what I don't want. So I can see I can run around and I can see where I am right now. And it actually, it keeps the player's kind of orientation up all the time, which is actually okay. I don't mind that. So instead of me moving around, the map moves with the player in a one-to-one fashion. And that's okay. I still think it's way too far away. So we can say is instead of 20, let's make it go down to 10. So a lot closer. 10 might be too close, but the great thing is now, well, where's the player, right? Because now I can't see the player at all, right? So 10, not the right size at all, okay? And still orthographic. What about if it's 15? That's maybe a little better. So 15 might be the right the right size. Again, I can see edges of my map, but that's okay because what I'm seeing is the player. So 15 might be the right size. One thing I don't like about this is the light. And I want to be able to not see the light inside of my minimap at all. How does that work? And does it even make sense, right? Okay, well, we know that the light that I'm seeing is a directional light. Okay, directional light. Right now, it's not flagged as anything. It's not any layer. It's in the default layer, right? So my MiniMap camera, which is right here, it shows everything, right? Including transparent FX, everything. It just sees everything, right? User interface, water, ground, all of it. I don't want to see the directional light. Let's see how this works if I turn it off. So I can make a new layer. We'll call this the directional light. And I want to tag this as the directional light. Okay. And in my minimap camera, I can stop seeing it. I can just like turn it off. So now what does that look like? Can I even see the scene without a thing? And yeah, the answer is yes, I can, right? I can kind of turn around. I can see that, but I don't see the directional light anymore, right? I do see the shadows and all that kind of stuff. But, on my minimap camera, it's kind of getting a little bit of shine and everything else from the directional light. So remember that here's the directional light. My minimap camera in the from a culling mask perspective is not seeing it. The directional light, this is also interesting. So the culling mask, this is what the light shines on, right? And what I can do is I can turn that off. So I can kind of declare the minimap camera as a thing. So add layer, minimap camera. Okay. Just going to put that in there. And then the directional light itself, I can turn off the minimap and see what happens. See what happens. Is it dark? What does it look like? Does it even work? So it's mixed, right? Mixed mode is what it says. So it's mixed mode. The direction is the type of light. Soft shadows is what I want. And culling mask, right, as an example, and let's just stop rendering for a second. Culling mask is which layers will be affected or excluded from the light's effect on objects in the scene. So definitely the minimap is going to be not affected. It won't be able to see the light or the layers as an example. Okay, and the minimap camera, there's certain things it can see and there's certain things it can't see, right? And that's why it's orthographic. Clear flags, solid color, right, is what it should be, and it should be black. And so that's why when we run this thing, in the background, you don't see anything. It's just completely transparent. Okay. If I made it depth only, I just want to show you the difference between, transparent and depth only. It does one of these. It actually it has trails. So that's depth only. Don't clear. Let's show you what this looks like. Very similar. Right? Does one of these kind of wipes. So it doesn't kind of clear afterwards. So I definitely want to put solid color. And that's the culling mask. Culling mask is basically saying, do I want to see the minimap camera, the directional light? What do I want to see? I want to see the marker. I can also turn off other stuff. I can turn off the ground. If I don't want to see the ground, I can turn off the ground and other things. So be careful what you turn off here, because then if you turn it off, you can't see it. So it's not terrible, not great. And one of the challenges I have with this minimap, well, first of all, we don't have a very large scene. Like our layers are pretty small, right? 10 is definitely not the right size. It's got to be something like 15 or 20. And what we may want to also like to do is make our quad even bigger than this because it's tiny. It's like super tiny where this is, right? And remember, we can make our quad, let's turn that quad back on so we can see it, our marker. We can make this quad bigger, right? I made it like 100 by 100, but remember that what we're doing is in the textures, a player marker texture, but pixels per unit are like 100. So let's make it 50 and apply. So the bigger I make it, and let's go back to 100. The bigger I make it, or if I make it 1:1, I won't have softening, but I don't care from that distance. It's going to still be really, really big. So really what I want to do is take my quad, which is my MiniMap, my player marker, and I want to change the size of the scale to twice as big. It's really big because it's got to be seen from the sky, right? Wherever the camera is. And by the way, the other way to do it is to change the, the level, where the camera is looking. All right, let's try that now and see if we can see that any better than what it was before. So that's much better, much easier for me to see the player marker, right? And you can see where the player is and what the player is doing. You can see that this doesn't matter if I jump, right? It doesn't show me because it's in orthographic mode that I'm looking. So it's pretty good. Okay. Not bad. All right. I like it. But remember what we can do is we can mask it out, right? So one thing we can do is right now, let's turn off the player marker. We don't need to see it anymore. So our marker is off. See you later. We can create something called a mask, right? And the mask is going to be an area, something that that's going to kind of hang out behind the image. And it could be something like shape, right? That I'm going to draw, and it's going to be, something that is going to hang out behind the image, right? Could be a circle. If I want to make it circular, or if I want to make it rectangular, it doesn't matter, but it's going to be hanging out behind. So let's do that. Let's add a circle. So we'll go back here. Nice. And actually, to prepare, let's switch out this marker and make a enemy marker too. So we'll say File. First of all, let's color this. We can do a quick recolor by going to Adjust Color, Color Fill, and I can change it to whatever color I want. For example, red, right? And I can save this file, Save As, and I can change this to enemy marker. So I have that just in case I need it later. Cool. What I want to do now is I want to make a new object. Again, let's make it a lot bigger. So let's remember our size of our map right now is like 250 by 250. And in my mind, that's how big or bigger the circle's got to be. Something like 300 by 300. Okay. Just so we have good resolution. Again, it's going to be a transparent background. Okay. And what we want, what do we do? Do we make a layer? Wow. Or is it just taking its sweet time? It's because I'm doing a lot of stuff at once for poor fireworks. Poor fireworks is going to crap out. And let's see if it's going to do that. Yep. That's okay. I'm all right with that. Just going to launch it and keep going. Again, you can use any program for this, but 200 by 200 is okay. Or sorry, 300 by 300. There it is. And so now I want a circle. All right, I want a circle, and I can start at the top left corner, and I want to kind of map it so it's on the bottom right corner. And thank you for that color, but that's not what I wanted. But I want to go at from 0, 0. And my circle is going to be a solid color, like white or black, something like that. Let's go with 300 by 300. And let's change the color to white. And we're not going to have any border whatsoever. That's going to be our object. White circle. So file, save as, and we're going to call this the MiniMap mask or mini mask. MiniMap mask. And we're going to save it again as an example where it should be, which is inside of desktop, GPC, GAME3004, Lab 2B, assets, textures. And there it is. We'll let that do its thing and go back here, and we have a MiniMap mask. Again, it's got to be of texture type 2D and UI, right? Just like I kind of did this one. So this one is, let's convert it, apply. One thing it is that I don't want it compressed, so I don't want this filter mode or clamping. So where it says compression, normal quality, none. So that's what it's going to be like. And I want to take that mini mask and I want to use this as an image that's going to be behind the other one. So if I go back to my my MiniMap, which is on the canvas, then notice that it has something called maskable. Okay. And I can add components. So if I type in mask, right? So there's a sprite mask and there's a mask and there's a rect mask 2D. Okay. So different kinds of masks, right? If I add a sprite mask, then I can select the sprite that is going to be used for the mask. So again, if I go back to see this thing, it's way out here. And if I use a sprite like this one, and I drag and drop it in there, right? That's the mask, okay? If that's a sprite mask. Okay, so that's the mask that I can say. First of all, it's maskable, right? That's the thing that needs to be seen as an example. And the sort point is center. And is it sprite mask? Hold on a second. I don't think it's doing it. No. So that's not what I want. Let's at least that's not what I think I want. Let's just remove that component. Let's add another mask. Let's just add a mask. There we go. And show mask graphic. Cool. But what mask is going to be the one that is the material? It is maskable. Oh no, sorry, that would be the mask. Whatever I attach the mask to. Remove component. Let's add a new image or texture. So on here, so I'll say under the canvas, let's add a new UI image, if I'm not wrong. Not a raw image this time, just an image. And let's make it so that it has that sprite as the image. So there it is. Let's move it into position. And we'll make this the mask. Right, so I'll add this in as a as the mask. So we'll say that this is the mask, right, as an example. And what I'm going to do I think what I need to do is layer it behind the MiniMap and make it bigger, like the same size as the width and height of what I have. So width and height should be like 300 by 300. So that's going to be the size of this image. That's what I want for the mask. This is how big it's going to be. Try this one more time because I need it to be pointed to this image. Now, is it an image or a raw image for the masking? And just make sure that we can do this with sprite mask. Okay, I'll fix the mask after. Let me just, because I want to make sure that this is good. So let's take a short break. And what I'm going to do is when I come back, the next video that we're going to make, because we got the mini map working, it works okay. It's not great in terms of the way it turns. I'm not happy with that. I think, again, I'd like to use Cinemachine in the next video. I'm going to do mask improvement for this one, right? So I'm going to put the mask on. And after I have the mask working properly, what it's going to do is there's going to be, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it's a round mask, or even if it's a squarish mask, there might be several layers that I put together so we can see what this thing looks like. Okay, so we're going to stop the video now, and then we're going to come back and do the next one. What do I do?